The seating chart lay across Victoria's dining table like a battle plan. I watched her finger tap a circle labeled Table 12, Singles/Miscellaneous. Maya goes here, Victoria told her wedding planner. Far enough that no one has to explain why she's alone. Again. I stood in the doorway holding the bridesmaid dress she'd texted me to pick up. At 31 I'd grown accustomed to my family's dismissive tone, but miscellaneous stung differently. Table 12 is near the kitchen entrance, the planner said carefully, glancing at me. Perfect, Victoria said without looking up. Maya won't mind. She's used to being unattached. No career to speak of, no relationship, just that little blog. We can't have her sitting with Douglas's family. What would they think? Our mother Patricia swept in carrying fabric swatches. Victoria's right, dear. The Huntington Clarks are very traditional. Douglas's mother already questioned why we included you in the wedding party. A 31-year-old bridesmaid with no prospects sends the wrong message. For 3 years I'd been building something that mattered. But to my family, if it wasn't a corporate title or a diamond ring, it didn't exist. I understand, I said quietly. Table 12 is fine. Victoria finally looked at me, her expression mixing pity and irritation. Don't take it personally. This wedding is important. Douglas's father is a Supreme Court justice. His uncle is in Parliament. We're inviting 3 ambassadors and the CEO of Huntington Industries. Everything has to be perfect, and that means everyone in their proper place. What Victoria didn't know was that my little blog was the primary investigative source that exposed the Berkshire corruption scandal. For 30 months, I'd worked undercover as a policy analyst, documenting systematic fraud in government contracts. My reporting, published under a pseudonym, had triggered parliamentary investigations and 12 criminal prosecutions. The Prime Minister's office knew my real identity. So did the Home Secretary and Attorney General. In 2 weeks I was scheduled to testify publicly before Parliament. My name would become public then, along with my role in saving taxpayers £40 million. But today I was just Maya, the unmarried cousin. Miscellaneous. The week before the wedding, Victoria called at midnight, furious about my +1 request. Who would you possibly bring? She hissed. Don't embarrass yourself with some random man you hired. A colleague from work, I said calmly. From your blog. Victoria laughed. Maya, this is 500 people at Ashford Manor. There's no room for your imaginary friend. I deleted the request. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Winters would understand. The final humiliation came at the rehearsal dinner. Douglas's mother Eleanor positioned herself next to me with precision. Victoria tells me you write online, she said, her smile sharp. How quaint. What do you write about? Policy analysis. Government efficiency. Oh. Her expression suggested I'd announced a career in ditch digging. And this supports you? Or do your parents help? Behind her, Victoria's panicked face revealed she'd let the Huntington Clarks believe I was financially dependent. I manage, I said simply. Well, Eleanor continued, perhaps focusing on more traditional pursuits might serve you better. A woman your age should be thinking about settling down, not playing at journalism. Playing at journalism. I'd spent 3 years embedded in government offices, photographing documents, building an airtight case while working 16-hour days. I'd received death threats and changed national policy. But to Eleanor Huntington Clark I was playing. The wedding day arrived with typical English uncertainty. I dressed in the pale lavender bridesmaid gown Victoria had chosen because it washes out Maya's complexion, which is good. At Ashford Manor, I performed my duties quietly, holding Victoria's train, organizing flower girls, smiling for photographs where I was positioned at the edge of every frame. The ceremony was beautiful. Victoria looked radiant. Douglas seemed kind enough, if oblivious to his family's cruelty. The reception began smoothly. Victoria and Douglas circulated among tables arranged in careful hierarchy. Head table, parents, VIP guests, university friends, distant relatives, and finally table 12. I sat with Victoria's former roommate's divorced sister, 2 second cousins I'd never met, and Douglas's elderly deaf great-aunt. We were the miscellaneous. Lovely ceremony, the divorced sister said half-heartedly, already on her second wine. I checked my phone discreetly. A text from Sarah Winters. Security says PM running 20 minutes late. Hope you're ready. My heart quickened. Ready. Yes, I was ready. The shift came subtly. Security personnel entered through the main doors. Not manor staff but unmistakably protection officers. More appeared, taking positions around the perimeter. At the head table, Douglas's father noticed. He leaned toward Eleanor, speaking urgently. Guests began murmuring. Victoria stood, confused and annoyed at this disruption. Then Prime Minister Clarissa White walked in. She entered flanked by her security detail and the room fell silent. She was younger than on television, with sharp eyes that surveyed the room with purpose. I remained seated at table 12, watching Victoria's expression cycle through confusion, excitement, then dawning horror as the Prime Minister walked past the head table, past the VIP section, directly toward the back. Toward me. Miss Soren, the Prime Minister said, extending her hand as I stood. I apologize for the interruption, but I wanted to personally thank you before your identity becomes public next week. 500 people held their collective breath. Your investigative work on the Berkshire scandal was extraordinary, she continued, her voice carrying clearly. 18 months of undercover research, impeccable documentation and remarkable courage. You've saved this country millions and restored faith in our institutions. I shook her hand, aware of every eye fixed on us. Thank you, Prime Minister. I was doing what needed to be done. No, she said firmly. You were doing what no one else had the skill or bravery to do. The Home Secretary asked me to convey his gratitude. As did the Attorney General. She glanced around with a slight smile. Given that your name becomes public in 9 days, I wanted to acknowledge your service before the media circus begins. She addressed the room. This young woman is the investigative journalist known as Source Omega in the Berkshire scandal. Her work led to 12 prosecutions, recovery of £40 million, and fundamental reforms to government oversight. She testifies before Parliament next week, and I expect her face will be on every newspaper in the country. The silence broke into stunned applause. But I was looking at Victoria. My sister stood frozen, her face cycling through disbelief and mortification. Eleanor Huntington Clark had gone pale, champagne glass suspended mid-air. Justice Huntington Clark rose slowly, his expression grave. He knew the Berkshire scandal intimately. He stared at me as if seeing a ghost. I also understand, Miss Soren, that you've been isolated from family during this investigation, the Prime Minister continued. Necessary for security but still difficult. I hope they understand now what you've sacrificed. She turned to Victoria with a polite smile. Congratulations on your wedding. Your sister is remarkable. I hope you're very proud. Then she was gone, security flowing around her. The applause continued, scattered and uncertain. People stood trying to see me better. Photographers frantically adjusted cameras. I remained standing at table 12, the miscellaneous table, as my family's perfect wedding collapsed into chaos. Victoria reached me first, pushing through the crowd with Douglas trailing behind. Her makeup couldn't hide the red flush spreading up her neck. You knew, she hissed. You knew she was coming and didn't tell me? You didn't ask what I was working on, I said quietly. You decided what my life was worth without bothering to find out. Eleanor appeared, composure shaken. Miss Soren, I apologize. I had no idea. That I was playing at journalism? I finished. Justice Huntington Clark joined them, expression serious. Miss Soren, I've read the classified briefings on your investigation. Your work was exceptional. He glanced at his wife, then Victoria. And I'm deeply embarrassed by how you've been treated today. The crowd had formed a circle. Phones raised, cameras capturing everything. Victoria's perfect wedding disrupted. Her image shattered. My mother pushed through, face showing confused pride and social panic. Maya, why didn't you tell us? You never asked, I said. You saw what you expected. Someone alone. Someone miscellaneous. The word landed like a stone, ripples of discomfort spreading through listeners. Douglas spoke, voice gentle. Maya, I'm sorry. I should have gotten to know you myself. Sarah Winters appeared at my elbow. We should go. Press will be here in minutes. He was right. Guests were frantically texting, composing social media posts. By tomorrow this would be everywhere. I looked at Victoria one last time. My sister stood in her beautiful gown, her perfect day irrevocably altered, face showing first real awareness that she'd misjudged everything. I hope your marriage is built on actually knowing each other, I said, rather than assumptions. Then I followed Sarah toward the exit, leaving table 12 behind forever. The news cycle was brutal. Within 24 hours, photographs of me alone at the back table contrasted with the Prime Minister seeking me out. Social media labeled it #SinglesTableScandal. Eleanor issued a public apology. My mother called 17 times. Victoria sent a long text oscillating between remorse and defensive justification. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I prepared for parliamentary testimony. 3 days later, Justice Huntington Clark published an opinion piece in the Times admitting his family's failure to recognize excellence. Douglas sent a message. Sorry isn't enough, but it's a start. Victoria called a week later after the testimony made headlines again. He was crying. I spent so much time worrying about appearances, she said. And I missed knowing my own sister. Yes, I agreed. You did. Can we start over? I thought carefully. We can start fresh. But not by pretending the past didn't happen. By doing the work to actually know each other. It would take time. Trust required careful reconstruction. But looking at the commendation letter from the Prime Minister on my wall, no longer secret, no longer miscellaneous, I understood something important. My worth had never depended on their recognition. It existed in the work I did, the integrity I maintained, the courage I found when it mattered. They had banished me to the singles table, labeled me as less than, dismissed my life as insufficient. But I had never been alone. I had been exactly where I needed to be, doing what mattered, building something that would outlast any wedding, any social hierarchy, any family's limited vision. And now, finally, they were beginning to see it too.